Hey there, welcome. Welcome to Rise and Receive. This is an opportunity in your day to stop whatever you're doing and take a little time to explore how to receive fulfillment in your life by unlearning struggle. So today we're going to talk about tip number 2 to invite fulfilling relationships. And the topic for today is focus on the relationship, not the person. So welcome Julie, and welcome those of you who will be joining me live or later on in the video. I'm really excited to share this because today's concept is something that when I learned it from one of my very first relationship teachers, it just completely changed my outlook on relationships. It established a brand new paradigm, and it's actually become a very foundational piece about how I teach and coach around relationships. So if there is a particular relationship in your life that you either would like to invite more fulfillment into, or if you would like to be in a relationship that doesn't exist, maybe it's a romantic one or in some other capacity, maybe it's at work and you want to have something more fulfilling, then I really think you're going to like this particular tip. So if you don't know me, my name is Sonia Miller. I'm a speaker, coach, and best-selling author, and I mentor ambitious, goal-oriented people to surpass their limits with ease and speed. And the way that I do this is I illuminate the behaviors and the blind spots that are unique to outcome-driven people so that they can open up to whatever it is that's in the way of surpassing their limits. And the way that I do this is I teach the skill that most outcome-driven people are missing, which is how to receive. Because if there's one thing that I've discovered over 20 years of coaching and being a recovering, over-functioning, outcome-driven person who was having my own upper limits, is that there's a universe of difference between pursuing your goals and receiving your goals. And ambitious, goal-oriented people are really good at pursuing their goals. We act much like the hunter. But when you're not receiving your goals, when you're hitting your upper limit, it's usually because you're missing this one skill, which comes from the being model of power as opposed to the doing model of power, which is what hunter types tend to over rely upon. And we bring this into every area of our life, including relationships. So today we're going to talk about, as I said, tip number 2, which is to focus on the relationship versus the person. So how does that apply here in terms of pursuing versus receiving? Well, what tends to happen is when we're in pursuer mode or hunter mode or doing mode, and we apply that to our relationships, then we're going to be focusing on a target or a goal. And the way that translates to relationships is we're focusing on a person, whether it's a person that we want to have in our lives that we don't have in our lives, whether it's a person that we do have in our lives and we want it to feel better, we want things to change, we want them to behave differently, we want to feel better around them, we want to feel more powerful. When we're focused on the person, i.e. the target, we set ourselves up for being minimally powerful in that situation. And this is why. And I'm going to look at my notes because I don't want to forget anything here. We got some really important tips. So when you're focused on the person, which means you're focusing on a target like the hunter, and you want something that you don't have, okay, you're going to be operating from, I want to get something. I want to get something from that person. Once you're in getting mode, you've already set yourself up to begin losing. Because when you're trying to get something, you're operating from lack. And then if you're trying to get something from that other person and your needs aren't being met, you're going to start looking at that person as there's a problem, whether that person's a problem or their behavior is a problem or what they're doing is a problem or what they're not doing is a problem. And all that and everything that I want to feel has to change in them. So now you're trying to change that person. You're trying to control their behavior. You're trying to fix something that you think is broken. It's a downward spiral. Okay. So when you're in hunter mode, that's putting you in a place where you're really going to be minimally powerful. At best, you might be able to manipulate, control, nag, and or even force some sort of change, but you're not going to really get what you want, which is the feeling of fulfillment. At best, you might get what you want temporarily, but it isn't really going to deliver you to a better experience. Okay. And when you're having to force something, it's not good. It's just not good. It's not really something that feels like, oh, it's being given to me freely, or I'm fulfilled, or I get to be who I want to be in the situation. So that's what happens in hunter mode when you're focusing on the person. Now, when you're in receiving mode, instead of focusing on the target or the person, what you're focusing on is the space in which an experience occurs. So instead of a hunter, you now look at the majestic tree for the symbol. The majestic tree, yes, it's a being, it's a living being, like we are human beings. But as a being, it's the embodiment of a space in which something occurs. It's the space that receives all of life. It receives everything it needs, perhaps most of what it wants. It receives the air and the animals and the nutrition from the earth. It receives everything. So as a receiver, flow is occurring. There's a space in which things can move on through, and then it becomes more of what it wants. It gets to experience life. It gets to circulate life. It gets to give to life. Okay, there's a whole bunch of an experience in its beingness and the beings that come to it that is occurring in the space. Okay, now when we start to look at relationships as a space, then as my very first teacher used to talk about, then the relationship becomes its own life form. So there's you, there's the other, and then there's what I call the third entity. The third entity is the relationship. And then you start to have power, because when you claim a space, which is what the tree does, the tree has claimed its space in the earth, right? And then everything that comes to its space. When you're claiming the space of a relationship, then you get to decide what you want in the space. So you can be an invitation for the qualities, the experiences, the feelings you want to have. If something comes into your space that you don't want, you get to say no. You get to have boundaries. This is my space. This relationship is my space. And when there's a space now, you can activate the power of invitation, which is what we talked about in tip number 1. So let me talk a little bit more about this way of looking at relationship. You become, instead of focused on the target, aware of the space and the experience you want to have in the space. In this space, then, you can have a very creative experience instead of trying to get something and control something, which is going to kill. You know, if you're going to go after a target, you're going to kill it if you're a hunter. In this space, you can be creative. So think about a pot of soup, right? A pot of soup has all these ingredients. The space of your relationship has the ingredients of who you are, the ingredient of who you're allowing into the space with you to have that relationship, you and the other. And when one ingredient changes, it impacts the whole. So your power then is not in trying to change the other person, but in looking at who do I need to be to attract, to receive, to activate the experience that I want to have in this space. You have all the power over who you be in this space. And that single ingredient, you and how you're being, is what changes the experience in the space. So let's talk about how that translates into real life relationships. Let's say, for example, you want an experience in the relationship of being seen. Right? This is important to you, that you feel seen and that you feel valued in the relationship. Now, I guess I'm going to check my notes again because these are really powerful ideas. When you want to feel seen, do you focus on the other person and say, hey, you need to see me. You need to see me, jumping up and down. Or do you look within, because your consciousness creates your reality? Go back to tip number 1 if that's a new idea for you. Your consciousness creates your reality. And you start to look at, how am I being in this relationship? Do I see myself? Do I really allow myself to see how I feel about things that are happening, how I feel about what I want and what I don't want, how I feel about, something that feels inappropriate or too much. I don't want this in my space. Do I see that? Do I value that? Okay. Do I let my needs, my wants, my preferences be seen? Do I share them freely or do I hide them? Now, do I see the other person? I remember when I had a really powerful epiphany after I'd had some painful experiences in past relationships and I was in a new relationship. I kept focusing on the person because that's what would get my attention. This is very common and very human. And there came a point that I realized, you know what? I am not respecting that person. I am not actually seeing that person for who he is because I kept having these painful wounds arise and I would project the past onto this person. And I realized that seeing that person for who they were was an act of respect, and I wanted to be seen for who I was. So do I see the other person? So do you see how when you identify an experience that you want to have and you start to look at yourself, who do I need to be to attract the experience I want to have? And you explore that within yourself, you have all the power to influence that experience. You change the ingredient of you, and then that changes the space and the experience in the relationship. And yes, it's a discovery process, but this is the way that you actually invite fulfillment in your relationships. Another experience that you might want to have, you might find yourself saying, I want the experience of being loved for who I am. I really just want to be loved for who I am. So if you're not having that experience, you might explore, for example, do I really bring all of who I am to the relationship? Because if we hide parts of ourselves, how's that other person going to know us enough to love us? We have to bring ourselves fully. We have to risk showing ourselves in order to experience being loved for ourselves. And that's vulnerable, but that's where the power lies, power and vulnerability. Do I value my uniqueness? Or if I'm honest with myself, am I kind of wrapped up in people pleasing and seeking approval and contorting myself so that I be who I think they want me to be so that they'll approve of me? So am I being approved of and settling for that? Or am I opening up myself to discover how I could be loved for who I am? Well, that means I have to change the personal ingredient of people pleasing and reveal myself to invite being loved for who I am. Another one is, and I see this a lot, I've certainly had to work through this, is if you've gotten your value out of what you do and what you achieve, we call that transactional value. And that's very much a sort of a symptom of overfunctioning like the hunter. And then what you do in the relationship is you show up with a lot of doing and overfunctioning and just really being useful, whether it's emotionally useful and being offering all of the support or just doing for the other person because that's your comfort zone. Well, you might feel valued and you might feel comfortable because you know that you're good and valued for what you do. You've gotten that validation. But to stop all the doing and simply be in all of who you are, your whole being, and then actually trust that you could be loved for who you are, do you bring that to the relationship? Well, once again, you have the power to influence the experience in that space, but it begins with you. So those are a couple examples of how to invite fulfilling relationships by beginning to explore how to focus on the relationship, that third entity versus the person. Okay, I'll give you a couple more examples because this really helps to drive these things home. So when I first learned about this idea, I was dating the man who would later become my husband. And our relationship was great for a long time before, it ran its course. We were together for 18 years. But when I was dating him, I remember this was a new experience. I was showing up very differently than I'd ever had because this was the first time somebody actually loved me for who I was. Because before then, what I was used to was the kind of relationship relationships where you have to earn their love, and they were dramatic and mostly unavailable. Like I was really good at choosing people who were unavailable because that's what I knew. So here I did enough healing work, and this person loved me for who I was. And, I didn't have to earn it. And it was really uncomfortable. And I almost sabotaged it a few times. But I remember this time that I was driving the car, and in my mind, I had this list and I was just picking him apart. Well, he's this and he's this and he's this. I was focused on the person. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Maybe I should break up with him. Those voices of self-sabotage, because I just was so uncomfortable with being loved for who I was. So, that was kicking in. But I knew enough about focusing on the relationship instead of the person. So I'm like, oh, he's this and he's this, and I don't know about this, and I don't know about this, and he does this, person, problem, right? I heard the voice and I stopped and I said, Sonia, stop focusing on the man. How's the relationship? And the answer was, it's great. It's A-okay. He shows up. He follows through. He treats me like gold. He loves me. And I was creating a problem. But when I really looked at the experience I wanted to have with him, it was all there. So it was such a powerful paradigm shift. So I offer that to you, and take it into your life, whether it's professional, family, friends, romantic. See how you can apply this third entity relationship concept and watch what happens, because now you are focusing on, I already have this space. Whether you're actually in a relationship or not, I have this space, this vision that I want. Now that's the consciousness of abundance, and I'm an invitation to join me, as opposed to hunting out there, which is lack and control based. All right. So, excuse me. So a great tip that you can take away, that to just make this simple, is when in doubt, when you want to impact the relationship quality, when you want to create or invite more fulfillment, simply ask yourself, what does my relationship need? Whether it's non-existent and you perhaps need to be an invitation, right? Or you need to identify what you want and be that person. Or whether it's an existing relationship and you want to experience something more, you can say, what does the relationship need? Go back to yourself. Who do I need to be to attract the experience I want? Now, if this is unfamiliar to you, which I know for me, when I began with this sort of a paradigm, it was really unfamiliar to me. It's a bit of a discovery process, and that's okay. But now you're asking the right question. And when you're asking the right question, that becomes an invitation to the insights and the awarenesses that you need. So practice this, and I'm going to give you a couple possible tips that you could, play with to move forward. The first thing I want to share that I'm super excited about is I have a brand new free service. I really wanted to have this online once I started this new series on fulfilling relationships. And it is this: if you would like to learn more about this or any other stuff that I share, and you're thinking, well, what are some next steps that I can take? You can go to showmenextsteps.com, answer 5 questions, and I will send you by email or text my recommendations that are going to be a match for your interest, your learning style, and your budget. It's absolutely free. Go to showmenextsteps.com, and that's my way of just continuing to invite you to explore these principles that are so very powerful in your own life, okay? And that's going to be online for indefinitely. So that's a resource you can always go to anytime you hear something where you'd like to go deeper or learn more, and you like some personalized recommendations about where should I put my attention next. Besides that, I also want to share today's Receive Oracle card. This one is Receive Love. So the affirmation that you can use to connect with this energy of invitation is this: I am willing to have the love inside of me come alive in my heart. I am willing to have the love inside of me come alive in my heart. So if you want the experience of love, begin with yourself. Begin being willing to see yourself as whole and complete. There's nothing missing. It's not out there. And as that love comes alive in your heart, you become an invitation for that experience in your relationships as well. So I hope you like this. If you did, please like, please share. It helps me reach the people that I'm here to serve. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. I'll let you know each time I release a new video. And with that, remember, you cannot receive what you most want if you don't know how to receive. So I hope you like this, and I'll see you at tip number 3. Bye-bye.